virtual corporation. Hey, ShopTalkers, we're here in beautiful Atlanta at the DRI 2016 conference. I am here with Scott Ream, President of Virtual Corporation. Hey, Scott, thank you for making time for me.
Oh, my pleasure, Grace. It's an honor to be here with you.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Now, this is a brief overview of the organization and some of the services that you provide.
Certainly. I started Virtual Corporation back in 1994. Can't believe how quickly 22 years has gone by.
Yes.
We specialize in helping organizations with organizational resilience, business continuity, IT disaster recovery, crisis and emergency management, as well as incident management. Our services are in the consulting arena. We help organizations design programs from scratch. We help them with enhancement. We also have two tools. We have something called the Business Continuity Maturity Model, which is a free assessment tool for assessing programs, their state of maturity, that anyone can download from our website, and is widely recognized around the world. We're very proud of that. And then we have a software tool called Sustainable Planner, which is a platform mostly for large enterprise or large mid-size that helps organizations implement any one of those disciplines. But increasingly our clients are leveraging it for integration of those various disciplines.
Okay, and before I forget, because we have so much to chat on, what is your website so that folks can get access to that, to the assessment?
Sure, to the maturity model.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's http://virtual-corp.net.
Okay, great. Now, share with us some of the current trends you see in the disaster recovery and business continuity industry.
Sure. It's all wrapped up in this whole concept of organizational resilience. Historically, you look back, IT disaster recovery was the first of these disciplines to come along. When the first computer was built, the second thing that computer did is it broke.
Yes, yes.
And there became a need for IT disaster recovery. And then as we advanced through the 80s into the 90s and local area networks came around, the folks doing IT disaster recovery needed to do recovery of the land. And, you know, if you're going to recover the land, well, you might as well do those icky end users and their desks and chairs and phones, and business continuity was born. And so where we're going now and where we've been going recently is towards the integration of these disciplines, looking at how business continuity data, BIA, recovery time objectives, dependency analysis, how this can help IT shops to do a much more effective job of managing the cost of and the delivery of disaster recovery. And conversely, getting disaster recovery targets and objectives back to the business helps them to plan more effectively when they need recovery strategies and things of that nature. And then you add into that crisis and emergency management, which is the oversight. Well, emergency management, of course, is response and recovery on around this activity, but crisis management is the executive command, control, and communications oversight.
Okay, now this will lead us to my next question. Do you think enough businesses and organizations are forward-thinking enough to have disaster recovery and business continuity on the forefront of their mind?
Well, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that, Grace, because it's interesting. Over the last 15 years, by far the largest emphasis has been in what we would call the regulated industries. Okay, those sectors of the economy where there is a mandate, thou shalt do, business continuity, disaster recovery, government, financial services, insurance, and to a lesser degree healthcare, although they're under increased regulatory pressure. You get much outside of those areas into manufacturing, retail, some of the other sectors of the economy. There really isn't a regulatory pressure, but it really, what we are seeing is an increase in the, you know what, it's just the right thing to do. But beyond that, our philosophy at Virtual is tying organizational resilience to the operations of the enterprise, pays significant dividends that go well beyond the governance, risk, and compliance demands of organizational resilience.
That's very interesting. Now, to share with you a little bit,
Sure.
my background is retail development, which is design, construction, and facilities management.
Okay.
So, and this is my first DRI 2016 event.
Sure.
So it was such an eye-opener. And what I found was that, maybe it's just me, but it seems like the retail folks are always kind of lagging when it comes to industry, to a specific industry to embrace, whatever it may be, whether it was technology. We were always kind of a ladder to embrace it. And then now it's business continuity and resilience. I kind of feel that some retailer chains practice, they have it, but it's not practiced.
Well, I can speak to those retail entities that we work with, and maybe they're self-selecting because they've chosen to work with
Yes.
us. But one of the largest big box retailers in the country uses our software. We have consulted with them, and they have a very mature business continuity disaster recovery program. On the web retail side, as you might imagine, for them, it's all about availability. You know,
Yes.
if I'll use it as an example, if eBay goes down, obviously they're out of business. So
Yes.
for them, IT disaster recovery is critically important. But you mentioned something that I think your listeners might find interesting. You're talking about retail construction. And one of the great opportunities in any area when it is an enterprise-owned facility, or maybe even when it's not, we had the opportunity several years ago to work with a large regional healthcare provider that was doing a $300 million capital expansion. And they actually brought us in on the front end of that, but prior to choosing the GC for that project, and had us do an assessment of the plant and actually make recommendations on hardening the facility for business continuity and safety considerations.
That's amazing
So,
to have you catch it on the forefront of
correct.
Yes,
And as a result, it led them to get from management an additional $150 million to add to the capital improvement. This was for the facilities team at that particular healthcare facility, and to ensure that they are building a more resilient infrastructure.
It's so interesting too, because I had a wonderful discussion at lunch with a gentleman who is a retailer as well too, and he had an excellent plan in place for disaster recovery and business continuity, and that seems to be rare for me to see that, because we had a very similar discussion at how there are many retail chains out there, even to get facilities, general repair and maintenance, and remodels for the upkeep of the brand and the operations of the store, to get that approved and really to the forefront. It seems like business continuity and disaster recovery is so far behind that even still.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because when you look overall at the dimensions of organizational resilience, one of the challenges for any organization is how do you bound the scope of this? Because the classic examples I always use of crisis management done well and not so well is we all remember a certain oil company having trouble up in Alaska and not necessarily handling the crisis management of that event so well. And we also all remember J&J and the Tylenol scare and how quickly they responded with tamper-proof containers, and as a result, Tylenol was in every hospital in the country. So organizational resilience has lots of tentacles, and it's really a matter of what's the executive appetite for engaging in this kind of activity, and where is the leadership for this, and what are the resources available to support it.
Yep, absolutely. It all is about the leadership.
It is.
And getting the leadership behind.
Yeah, it's interesting. Our business continuity maturity model defines 7 corporate competencies that are the measurable criteria around which program sustainability is derived. And the top of that list is leadership.
It always is.
Okay,
Yep.
but then you've got program structure, you've got metrics, you have resource availability. There's a number of other criteria, but without leadership, it's just not going to work.
Okay, very interesting. What's a hot project you have on your plate right now?
Well, our two largest sectors are healthcare and government. And right now, we are honored to be working with one of the nation's leading healthcare providers in the country, helping them design their business continuity program from scratch. We have a methodology about how one first engages the management team. And we do this through something we call an executive business impact analysis, where we sit with each executive one-on-one, engage them in a game. We call it the materiality game, which is really fascinating because, as we all know, executives can tend to be a little abbreviated in their attention span.
Just a little bit. The ones I come across. Yeah.
And so this is an hour-and-a-half interview.
Oh, wow.
And I've had numerous of them come in, look at their watch and say, you've got 15 minutes. And without fail, 100% of the time, we've gotten them to stay for an hour and a half. They end up saying, this was not only a good use of my time, it was enjoyable.
Wow.
And what we get out of that is we get clarity from that executive's point of view on, first of all, confirmation, what area do they sit over, what are the impacts if disrupted, and why they are deriving it that way. Because that data, if you can get the executive to articulate recovery times and impacts, that so dramatically reduces the work effort and the churn in doing departmental business impact analysis. Because if you have the executive's point of view, you're no longer now getting the department to come at it from the point of view of, oh my gosh, I have to demonstrate how important I am. Therefore, every recovery time's got to be short. Well, if your executive's telling you that, these two things that are done in your department can go away for a month, but this one thing must be done, well, then there's no debate. And what we always tell everyone is, no matter what department, no matter where you are in the organization, in today's world, in today's economy, corporations, private, public, not-for-profit, there isn't anything being done that's wasteful. Every function that's being performed is already important.
Absolutely.
But the nature of business continuity is, what are those few things that you do that, if disrupted, could cause your organization to fail?
Yeah, the key elements.
Correct.
And I love this in-depth interview that you do, because it's so critical that you're actually, in essence, getting the leader's blueprint, essential blueprint of what is required to run the business.
Yeah, and actually this materiality framework that we use, we start with interviewing the chief financial officer, the chief risk officer, and then we talk to several of the key operations executives, and we quantify measurements for that institution. As an example, with the CFO, we will say, how much of a financial loss could this institution sustain before you would be uncomfortable about the survivability of the institution? And then that becomes the upper limit. So now when we're talking to any other executive and we're asking them to quantify financial impact, there's no debate. That other executive isn't going to come back to me and say, well, why'd you choose 50 million as the upper limit? Well, because that's what your CFO told us is the limit, and here's the reasons why. Oh, okay, well, let's move on. And so, and it makes for a very efficient conversation.
Certainly sounds like it. Wow.
And it's an awful lot of fun, I have to say.
I just find it fascinating that you can keep them for longer than 15 minutes. It sounds like it's an amazing program.
It is. It's a lot. And then and so I was mentioning that in the context of launching a program. So once we've gotten the executive engaged, we then have what we call a program design workshop, where essentially, because again, at the end of the day, what the executive wants to know is, what's the outcome? How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost me? How much of my people's time is this going to take? Da-da-da-da-da-da. And so the purpose of the program design exercise is to convert all of the dimensions of the scope and all the results of the executive BIA into an intelligent, or at least an effective, implementation plan that you can digest down into a few slides for an executive and say, boom, here's the plan, authorize us to go do this. Okay? And then from there you move into the stages of implementation.
Yeah, and I think, for the organizations such as yours and that model you're working with to get the buy-in, if you will, the partnership from leadership, that's critical.
Oh, it is. Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, our free maturity model, leadership's right there at the top. And it is one of the first competencies that has to mature. Because without leadership engagement, you're the tail wagging the dog.
Absolutely. For the last wrap-up question, what's your biggest takeaway from the DRI 2016 conference?
Oh, that's easy. I've probably been one of the harshest critics of all of the certifying bodies ever since I started virtual 22 years ago. There's a tendency for them to be a little self-serving, and I think the owners, the founders, those driving DRI today would speak equally that there is still some self-serving quality to the certification in our industry, but I think that applies to all. But what I am most excited about here in 2016, Al Berman, the president, CEO, I forget which one he is, but the leader, certainly the visionary for DRI, has a very clear idea of where he wants to take this organization. And I'm impressed with both things already achieved in terms of globalizing DRI, and we're very excited as one of the sponsors here to be a partner in that growth, as we are ourselves experiencing significant growth.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And one more quick shout out for your website is
virtual hyphen the minus sign corp .net.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott Ream, President with Virtual Corporation. Thank you so much for your time.
Grace, thank
and sharing all your expertise. And I'm actually very intrigued. I may take you up on that offer because I'd love to see that model and that process you do with leadership. That's great.
Great, we can do a deeper dive whenever you like.
I love that. Thank you so much, Scott.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
How do you do?